happened?
There was an accident. A car accident.
From David Lynch, the director of Twin Peaks and Blue Velvet.
Could be someone's missing.
The girl is missing.
I just came here from Deep River, Ontario, and now I'm in this dream place. I don't know who I am. That money, you don't know where it came from.
Oh, by the way, those 2 detectives came by again looking for you.
Someone is in trouble. Something bad is happening.
Now you got me scared.
There is no band, and yet we hear a band.
Silencio. I remember something.
What is it, Rita?
What is it? What do you see? Mulholland Drive.
Mulholland Drive.
That's where I was going.
Diane, the car's waiting. You coming?
Hello, welcome to Movie Uppers. I am Bob Sham.
Hola, I'm Angela.
This sounds here maybe dogs, and this is it. We're saying goodbye with this film. It is our last selection for this month's Women in Crisis.
Yes.
But don't be sad, because by the end of the week, we'll be starting our next month's theme for March that we're calling The Left Hand Endeavor.
Oh, yeah.
Classic film noir. 5 days a week, just like Halloween Hump Fest, but for classic film noir. We love classic film noir. We love shit like that. And we got a month packed with it. A lot of bangers, a lot of high quality stuff. Probably our most consistently, critically hailed bunch of movies ever. Even more than this month, just for the fact that there's just so much more of it. But before we go there, we have this one last Women in Crisis movie. And what we'll reflect on this month of women losing their minds. A lot of women losing their minds. Women getting attacked by birds, jinns, shit like that. And also
the healthcare system.
The healthcare system, the man, society, man.
I would like to give you a little extra props for
coming back from the dead and shit. What?
Yeah, I was just going to say I would like to give you a little extra props for having this be the last movie going into noir, because this is neo-noir.
Yeah, yeah.
And I know that you know that, but if anyone listening does not know that, my husband is very, very smart.
Oh, thank you. You know, I'll never say that. It's not cool if I say it. But yeah, you know, David Lynch, I think Blue Velvet's a much more obvious neo, just the vibe, the feel of it.
Yes.
And also, you know, what are the movies that we know David Lynch is obsessed with? Wizard of Oz, we know that. We've established that with our Wild at Heart discussion.
Yes.
And also Sunset Boulevard. A movie that we have discussed early on that you can hear that episode for, but he is obsessed with that movie. And I think a lot in this movie is a bit of an ode to stuff like that.
And old Hollywood, we get the very obviously strong Rita Hayworth.
Yeah. And it's David Lynch, so it's a lot of like surreal dream inspired shit. Mm-hmm. That's right. We're talking about Mulholland Drive from 2001. Written and directed by Mr. David Lynch, starring Naomi Watts, Laura Elena Harring, Justin Theroux, Ann Miller. And of course there's music by the late great Angelo Badalamenti.
We love him.
Yeah, he's great.
Love him.
We like a David Lynch. We like him a lot. And this movie's no exception. Almost like a strange extended universe. It's not officially like in the Twin Peaks oeuvre, but this was a movie that was originally intended to be a show, and it did not get picked up. Mm-hmm. It seemed like David was always open to unpacking his ideas in long-form TV shows. As you can imagine, it's hard enough to get any movie or show made. And if you're David Lynch going up to like networks, you know, like he did with Twin Peaks, you know, it's Twin Peaks, I think, is one of the greatest TV shows ever.
Absolutely.
But it died after 2 seasons, you know.
And you know, he had so many plans because his whole thing is world creating.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he set the plans for so much more in Twin Peaks that we never really got to see. He did end up coming back 20 years later and doing a third season, which answered as many questions as it rose, or as rose out of it. I mean, I don't know if it answered. I was going to say more questions came up. More questions came up. But because this one was also going to be a television show, you can kind of see some of the other threads that got started in this that could have continued on. Or
at least like some of the little bits of ideas that we see from him, like at Wild at Heart. Mm-hmm. Which I think was filmed around the same time as Twin Peaks was developing.
Yes.
Sherilyn Fenn, who plays Audrey, in Wild at Heart, there's a scene.
One of the best scenes in the movie.
Where they come up and it's a car accident and she's got hit in the head and she ends up dying in that scene.
I will say maybe not one of the best scenes in the movie, but she is amazing in that scene.
And yeah, so it's like, oh, in your mind, you know, we had just watched Twin Peaks like not long before that. And so it's like, oh, it's Audrey, right? And it's wild. And this, how that comes together. And there was Sherilyn Fenn has claimed that there was a bit of a outline of this idea that maybe Audrey would be in a spinoff in which she goes to Hollywood. And so the Elena Harring's character in my mind, I kind of just made her kind of the Audrey, right, in my mind, because I know Audrey was supposed to go to Hollywood if that went forward, and then from Wild at Heart, she gets in a wreck and doesn't remember anything, and that's exactly kind of, you know, David's coming back to his themes and fleshing them out.
Absolutely. You also kind of, you know, in Twin Peaks, you have the tall man who is sort of a guide.
Yeah.
And in this movie, we have the cowboy.
Right.
Who is that guide again and sort of manipulating a little bit the situation. Not a little bit, straight up manipulating the situation.
Of course, this movie isn't, again, we're not going to have a bunch of answers, a lot more theories. If you know a little bit about David Lynch, you'll know he's not going to answer your questions for you. But it is fun to kind of go back, especially in movies like this, and read other people's interpretations and what you think is going on. And for the most part, I do think we've got it, figured out to where it makes sense for us. But there's still always going to be scenes and details. It's like, I don't know why that was there. I don't know why they did that then. I don't know why that part exists.
I actually don't think I've landed at what I think happened. We did talk about a lot last night, but even where I ended last night, I don't know if I agree with it today.
But even then, it's like there's no other director that will do that to you and yet be so critically praised at the same time.
He has actually said he thinks that this is one of the more straightforward movies that he's ever made.
Yeah.
Which is insane.
I feel like Blue Velvet's more straightforward than this.
Blue Velvet's definitely more straightforward.
Wild
at Heart is more straightforward.
Yeah. You like Wizard of Oz.
It's just more of him fucking with us. He's just constantly fucking with us. I
think so. I think you're right. But also the movies are really beautifully shot. They're like the details of it, the way he builds these characters and the way they act. He does really. It's not just this matter of like, oh, what was that? That didn't make any sense. He literally is establishing a very specific environment.
Though it may not make sense, everything is very much on purpose.
And it envelops you. It sucks you in. It's like you're in a strange dream.
Absolutely.
That's a little scary, but you're curious as to what is going on here. And that's what kind of sets him apart from maybe someone who just might be doing weird shit to do weird shit.
You know, and that's the other thing about Angelo Badalamenti. And David Lynch hasn't done a movie since he passed. And I don't know what that will look like because while things may be crazy and scary in this surreal world that Lynch is creating, for me at least, having that music that is new but also familiar is comforting.
Yeah, it is essentially some of the same stuff when it tries to establish like something's wrong. Yeah, we've heard a lot of these tracks before if you've kept track with Lynch's career.
It almost like supports how you're feeling. It's like, oh yeah, you should be scared right now.
But it's,
this is a nice moment.
But because we love the other works that these songs appeared in, it does present this layer of comfort. And I think there is a little bit of comfort in this movie, despite how strange and scary it can be. And I think that's what Twin Peaks did. Like, there's this balance of, like, there's something folksy, something, like, easy about it. And yet there will be parts that are, like, the scariest thing that has ever aired on network television. But that feeling comes along with this one. But is that feeling independent? Could you get that feeling just watching Mulholland Drive alone without the knowledge of his specific history? Is David Lynch making franchise movies? You know what I'm saying? For people who are real nerdy about movies?
Okay, I will say this. I think that someone just watching this movie could really enjoy this movie. But it is more for those of us who understand and know the other things that he has done, because there are so many moments that feel so much like other things that it almost makes it more eerie. So it's more comforting, but it's also more scary. You
know, I've pondered in certain critiques of, like, superhero franchises, like the Spider-Man movies, like that last one that had the Spider-Man from other dimensions.
That was fun.
It's a fun movie. It had strong emotional beats, but I had to question, like, does this mean anything without knowing about the last 20-something years of Spider-Man movies? Is that a flaw with the movie?
It is.
To be fair, you know, you could kind of ask that with David Lynch movies. What do they mean independent? I feel like a Blue Velvet does work very independently.
Yeah.
But this one, in my brain, I can't shake that tethered connection to the Twin Peaks side of things, especially with the Badalamenti music.
This one, more than anything else. Because I do, you know, I said, you know, I didn't have the connection with this one when I was younger. And I don't know if it's because I was obsessed with The Wizard of Oz also, but when I first saw Wild at Heart when I was younger, I fucking loved it. And I hadn't seen any of his other stuff at that time. So I think it just depends on what you connect to, but I think you're right, especially with this one more than the others. But every movie that we watch of his or revisit, I've seen this one now twice in the last year, and every time I watch it, there's more stuff that I notice. If you know his stuff, you're going to get more out of it. It's like you're getting little presents from him.
So he really is,
I think,
a franchise player for a specific type of film nerd.
Yes, but I think he would say that it's all more because it's in the same kind of world. You know?
It also does help to know, I think you do get them more if you're into older movies as well, because you can kind of see the backdrop to all of it. But let's get into this movie. Betty comes to Los Angeles, and she's aspiring to be an actor. And Elena Harring is playing
Rita is what she says her name is.
Harring is in a limousine, and it stops, and she's like, we're not supposed to stop here. And then these kids just like drag racing in the street end up plowing into the parked limo, and she crawls out of it after the crash, and she's taken a blow to the head, and she starts walking down the hills towards the city of Los Angeles.
Miles and miles.
And she ends up finding her way into this apartment building. It's owned by Betty's aunt, but her aunt is letting her stay there. But Elena Harring's character has wandered into this building, and Betty confronts her, and she thinks that she's supposed to be there. And she's like, what's your name? And she looks at a poster of Rita Hayworth from the movie Gilda. And she's like, my name is Rita. And Betty's a very easygoing, naive, but she's also she's very curious about Rita's life and what she's doing, and she wants to be very involved. She's more kind of into whatever Rita's story is that she can't remember than her own, like, acting career.
This is a character that honestly now would just end up being small town goody girl who's obsessed with true crime podcasts. She's naive, but this is a mystery, and it's so intriguing, and it's so exciting, and she's in Hollywood, and something exciting is happening to her.
A trope for a young, pretty girl coming into town.
Yeah.
And at the beginning of the movie, we cannot get into every fucking weird detail.
No way.
But there's like jitterbug swing dancers at the beginning. And
this little old couple who ended up on the plane with Betty, they made fast friends. And they are very creepy. Mm-hmm. And it seems almost as though they were delivering her to Hollywood.
So while Betty and Rita are trying to figure out what the deal is with Rita, Justin Theroux's character
is a
director by the name of Adam. Like the mob, like they're producers, but they almost feel like the mob. They want him to hire. They're like, we're going to give you all this control. You can cast all these people, but we want this very specific girl for this role.
Like that kind of old Hollywood. We're going to tell you who.
And we see information being parlayed back and forth to the little dude, the dwarf dude from Twin Peaks, but he's sitting in this chair and he's like a regular sized man, but it's still him. You can see his like head. So David Lynch brought this guy back who's like the leader of this mob.
And he is, instead of in a red curtained room, he's in a brown curtained room, but there is a red lampshade.
There is still a lot of red up in this movie. But this character, the director, Adam, is very, very ballsy.
There is no way that girl is in my movie!
This is the girl.
Hey, that girl is not in my film!
It's no longer your film. This is the girl.
He doesn't like getting pushed around. He carries around a golf club and he starts bashing in like the windows of the mob ride, which is kind of wild. And he goes home and he finds out that his wife is cheating on him with Billy Ray Cyrus.
Yeah.
Just forget you ever saw it. It's better that way.
But he gets beat up and he pours like pink paint onto his wife's jewels.
I love that. That's such a good revenge.
And most of his scenes, he's still walking around with like pink paint splattered suit.
He hides out in this divey hotel. His assistant gives him a phone call, like finds him, or he calls to check in or something. And she says, this man called the cowboy wants to meet with you. And he's like, what the fuck are you talking about? And he's a smart ass. He thinks he's smarter than everyone in the room. And he tells her, okay, yeah, fine. Like, I'll go meet with this cowboy.
Go to this ranch. And he does. And the guy, he's like a strange dream guy character in a David Lynch movie.
Meeting at a corral.
And he's like, you can do whatever you want here, but you got to pick that girl.
The rest of the cast can stay. That's up to you. But that lead girl is not up to you. Now you will see me one more time if you do good. You'll see me 2 more times if you do bad. Good night.
Naomi Watts, she's fucking great in this movie. Like her role here is fantastic, especially when we see what happens in the last leg of the movie. I'm trying to imagine her in any other movie as good as this. She's really quite fantastic in this.
Yeah.
But Rita, she's got like a key, by the way.
Oh yeah, so they open up her purse because they think once Rita finally comes clean to her, like, I don't know who I am. Once Rita finally comes clean to her and says, I don't know who I am, they open up her purse hoping there's an ID in there. It's full of cash and the weirdest key you've ever seen. It's like a triangle-y blue key. And they don't know what it goes to. And you kind of forget about the key for a bit. And they're going around and there's this great, guzzy, but really wonderful audition scene.
Yeah.
That Naomi Watts has that is so good.
Yeah.
But also the guy who's the producer's like touching her too much. And everyone, did you notice like everyone's like grabbing her, like they're manhandling her. And
it's funny because she goes through that scene and she nails it.
Well, there it was.
Yeah, there it was, all right. Baby, you got away with you. Really? Bob? Very good. Really?
Right?
Oh, hell yeah.
And she walks out and the casting one of the casting directors, who's just there to advise. They haven't hired her.
She's like
They walk out with this lady's assistant, and they're like,
God, that was awful. Not you, Betty. You were stellar, and I mean that. But poor Wally. He'll never get that picture made.
No.
Wally's days were up 20 years ago.
You know Woody Katz is only doing it for a favor. And the cast I hear so far is terrible.
Oh, God, terrible. That poor old fool Wally.
Well, they were like,
people
you're
are like
brilliant.
over the hill, but you need to do something else.
Yeah, this movie's never going to get made.
Yeah, I can set you up with some other things, but yeah, like they do an amazing job, but then like, I mean, there's a lot of Hollywood commentary here and a lot of, I wouldn't say it's as overtly bitter as Fire Walk with Me comes off very bitter in the aftermath of the Twin Peaks series, but this one, I think it's meant to be a lot funnier in this one.
I'm sorry. That was a highly recommended... That is considered one of the finest espressos in the world, What is going on here?
I agree. And, you know, they go across to where Adam, the director, is auditioning girls to be the star of this new movie. He looks a little strung out. You know, he's very tired. He's kind of going through the motions. This girl does a great job, and he has to tell her, like, hey, listen, honey, I have to audition everybody. Mm-hmm. And then here comes Camilla Rhodes, and that's who he's supposed to say yes to.
That's the girl that they want to...
And she does a fine job. You know, like, she's cute. She sings the little song, but all he has to do is say, this is the girl.
And he does, and that makes the mob happy. But Betty, the Naomi Watts character, is kind of hanging on the set, and he keeps looking back at her.
They have a connection.
He keeps looking back, and you don't know if she's familiar to him, or if like he in the back of his mind is like, that's actually the one I want. Like that's actually the person the look that would be perfect for this.
But what's interesting and even more interesting when we talk about Theory later is, you know, she's there and she might have been perfect, but she never has a chance. But before she knows she doesn't have a chance, she chooses to leave and go help Rita. Aside from trying to get into this movie that this apparently very famous and brilliant casting director that people listen to is saying that she's perfect for. She chooses Rita.
They're tracking down this apartment where they find a number or Diane that she used to live with, or they think that's how it played out.
Yeah, so Rita remembers the name Diane Selwick because the waitress's name is Diane.
Yeah.
And she's like, I remembered something. And so they look her up. There's only one D Selwick in the phone book. And so they go to her house.
And it's this exchange with the neighbor. She doesn't live in this one apartment. She lives in another one.
She doesn't live in 12. She lives in 17.
With a neighbor.
Yeah.
And so they're like, oh, okay. So they go over and they have to kind of break into the apartment. And they go and they see a woman, a brunette. We can't tell exactly what she looks like, but she's dead. Like,
Did you even see her? I couldn't even tell her hair color. She was in the dark and her skin was turning.
I'm not sure, but I thought it was maybe Laura Herring, like as the dead body, but you just couldn't tell. But it was scary when they come across it. So then they have to leave there because they just got freaked out. They found a fucking dead body. They don't.
Yeah.
Which, more questions than answers as to what's up with Rita here. They end up going back to Betty's place and they end up like hooking up it goes a little bit beyond just being your typical chubber.
Yeah, it's really hot.
It's you get a little beyond the chub here.
Yeah.
And it seems like they are now together, and then they go to this theater.
Well, she wakes up Betty because she starts talking in her sleep. Rita starts saying silencio, silencio. And she's saying a few other sentences. And yeah, they wake up and it's 2 a.m. and she says, I need you to go somewhere with me. This next chunk of this movie is one of my favorite scenes in any movie ever. And it's scary and it's creepy. And I know what I think it means, but I don't know. They get to this theater, they sit down, and the show begins. And the whole thing is the man is speaking in multiple languages.
Spanish and French.
Yes, and English. And so, like, saying all the, words, and basically he's saying there is no band. It's all a tape. This is an illusion. And there's even a man that comes out with, like, a trumpet, and it looks as though he's playing it. And then he, like, stops, and the trumpet's still going, but it sounds perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just very odd. And there's this blue-haired woman sitting in the balcony watching the whole thing happening. Young woman, but bright blue hair.
And then a woman comes out and sings Crying, the Roy Orbison song in Spanish.
Llorando por tu amor, llorando por tu amor.
And it's gorgeous. You can tell that she's broken.
It's a pretty powerful scene in the sense that before we watch her sing, it's explained to us that it's a tape, it's a band, but you forget.
It feels so real.
And then she falls.
And the song
still goes, and it like totally fucks you up, totally disconcerts.
And the girls are crying, and I'm crying, and the woman's passed out. And even before that, there's like lightning crashes and things that happen that
like
feels
that
very
song, Lightning Crashes.
Surreal. Oh yeah.
Hopeless until it falls to the floor.
Betty kind of starts shaking. They're having very visceral reactions in the room to everything that is happening here. And they're just like clutching each other. And by the end of the show, Betty picks up her purse, and inside of it is a cube.
Is a box. Yeah.
With a triangle opening, which they know matches the triangle key.
Does David Lynch like the movie Hellraiser?
I mean,
we can't say for sure, but
the idea of a box that potentially opens another dimension is very Hellraiser.
Or another reality, or and there's that part where the man that the guy dreams of is holding that box later in the movie. Mm-hmm. So that gives me a Hellraiser vibe. I wonder if he's ever seen it.
Because that's just like the end of Hellraiser.
Yeah, well, the guy doesn't turn into a dragon.
No, but
in this one, but
it just similar.
It does remind me of that. I don't think he's consciously ripping off Hellraiser.
No, I think David Lynch has a thing with finding keys and clues.
Yes.
And following steps to get somewhere, and you can't get there until you find the thing. Also, blue is a color that David Lynch uses in Twin Peaks to mean that something is out of the ordinary, because there's a blue rose.
The blue rose, yeah.
And the blue rose is not something that exists in nature. Mm-hmm. So blue in this movie looks very out of place, because everything is red and white. Like Betty's very like soft and pretty, and grays and blues and pinks, and Rita's very like red and black and sultry and dark. And then there's this blue thing. And I don't even know if there's blue literally in anywhere else in the movie except in that woman's hair.
Yeah.
Also, that whole stage is the red curtains, like Twin Peaks 2. Like, I don't know, it just feels so otherworldly. And the fact that they left her, they woke up at 2 a.m., got dressed, went across town, and happened to be there when a show was starting, and there were other people in the theater. It's like, it made you feel as though the show is going to start when the right people are there.
I've always kind of wanted some David Lynch things recreated that I ever saw. Imagine like the diner in Twin Peaks, like you can go there.
Yes.
The one that they based that on burnt up apparently. But imagine like you go to like a late night drag show and it's just completely recreating this that theater scene in Mulholland Drive.
It would be the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life.
And so they go back to her apartment with the box, and they know instinctively that the key is going to open this box, and it does.
As soon as Rita pulls the hat box down to get the key, Betty disappears. And then Rita turns the key, and then there's some weird like shifting that happens. And then the aunt comes in and sees a completely made bed, and there's no evidence that anybody had been there. And then you see the cowboy walk into Diane's apartment and go to the dead girl and say, "Hey, pretty girl.
Time to wake up."
This is why I now do think that everything we've just talked about, it's either another reality or it's a dream. And then we're going into the present.
Yeah, I do think that the last third of this movie is the real
reality.
People.
Yeah.
And so Betty is actually Diane, still played by Naomi Watts.
Yes.
Laura Herring's character is Camilla, who is the name of the person they wanted, that the mob wanted Adam to cast in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So Laura Harring is Camilla. Betty is now Diane, but we think she was always actually Diane.
Mm-hmm.
And they have that relationship, that same-sex relationship. But she's also Camilla has a relationship with Justin Theroux's character, Adam. And you got the feeling that this is like a throuple that fell apart or something like that.
I don't think it was a throuple, but I do think that, Diane is very obviously obsessed with Camilla.
And Camilla is becoming, you get this feeling she's becoming a very successful actor.
I think it could have gone down the throuple road if Diane wasn't so obsessed with Camilla. I don't think Diane can share, because there is a moment later where the woman who was Camilla in the other reality kisses Camilla, Rita, basically makes out with her right in front of Adam, and he does not care.
No.
And it's basically we'll see you later. So I think you're right. I think potentially she could have been part of that, but she wanted Rita all for herself, because there's even a part where, I'm going to keep calling her Rita, Camilla and Adam are in a scene, and he's basically doing that thing where he's like, "Hey, actor, step aside. I'm going to sit in the car and show you how to play this makeout scene," right? And she says, "Can Diane stay?"
Yeah.
So it's like she knows what's going to happen, but she wants Diane also there and to feel included.
But they also seem to just be completely emotionally fucking with Diane at the same time.
Yes.
They're just enjoying it. They're on their way to become these big stars, and this girl Diane, who never quite made it, who's obsessed with this rising starlet. She's just broken, shattered. She almost looks like she's strung out, but I think she's just
depressed.
We never see her doing any drugs. She's just messed up.
There is a part where you think they're going to have sex in Diane's apartment. They're both topless, and Camilla's laying on the couch, and it's weird because Diane kind of leaps over the couch on top of her and is straddling her, and she says, "What did you say, beautiful?" And she says, "You drive me wild." And then immediately says, "We can't do this anymore."
Yeah.
Or we shouldn't do this anymore. And I don't think it's not that Camilla's down to fuck. I think she is, but she's just down to fuck. I don't think she's down to have a dramatic lesbian relationship with Diane. And not that all lesbians are dramatic, but that's what this one would be.
In the first third of the movie, we meet this hitman in a very funny scene, actually, where he's got to steal this black book.
Which never comes back around. He kills a guy,
and you just have to watch the scene. It's very comical. It's probably the funniest part in the whole movie to me.
Oh yeah.
But the Diane character, keep in mind, it's very confusing. Betty is now Diane. Naomi Watts is now Diane, and Diane is hiring this guy to kill Camilla.
And what does he give her? He tells her,
a blue key.
When it's done, you will find the blue key in the place where we discussed.
Mm-hmm.
And then later, you see the blue key on her coffee table.
So yeah, she's laying in bed, and the movie ends with her shooting herself in the head. And you'll notice that when that happens, all this smoke fills the room, kind of like what happened when the Wicked Witch of the West got hit with a bunch of water or something. But smoke envelops this room, and then
she also, right before that, had hallucinated those two old people as being very, very teeny weeny tiny, and coming in under her door and then growing up really big and like chasing her into her bedroom where she then shot herself. So again, they're sort of like pushing her into a space.
And
were those her parents? I don't know.
Who knows?
I know.
Mr. Lynch ain't going to explain it to us. And it is fun to go down the rabbit hole with this movie. And, but it's an incredibly well made movie. And I can't speak highly enough of Naomi Watts' performance.
Oh my God,
in here.
I know.
And even in just when she gets into the Diane realm, that's when it's like, man, she really put her all into this movie.
Absolutely.
Laura Harring, she does a good job as well, but she kind of has to be this blank slate, right? Whereas it just seems like the emotional range is a lot of Naomi Watts doing a lot of that heavy lifting.
Well, and you know, I think that just supports the theory that the first 2/3 of the movie are in Naomi Watts' character's mind. They're in Diane's mind because, you know, one of the theories that I was reading is that that's all what Diane wishes their relationship was. She came to, because her aunt had died and had left her some money and she wanted to be an actress and it didn't work out for her. So
she won a jitterbug contest.
She won a jitterbug contest.
We saw swing dancing the first thing in the movie.
Yep. And those people were next to her when she won. So they could be her parents. They could be her grandparents, the old people. And, you know, then she gets in this relationship that doesn't go well with this woman who's beautiful. But anyway, in her fantasy, she comes from a small town, but she has an aunt that's there who has money and has an apartment and sets her up with an audition, and it's easy going and she does great and people want her in their movies. And this gorgeous woman is in her shower naked and then they're fucking and she needs her. She's not her own person without Betty or Diane. And so it's like she has this perfect doll that she can now do everything for and help. And Betty really does kind of boss Rita around.
Yeah.
You know, Rita says oftentimes, like, she doesn't want to do something or she doesn't want to go somewhere, and Betty, like, pushes and pushes. So in the Diane Camilla reality, Diane has no control. But in the Betty Rita reality, Betty has all the control. And yeah, I agree with you. I think this is a stellar performance from her.
Diane's weird dream fantasy, but the reality is she's just a fucking emotionally tortured, failed actress.
We should call out that we have seen this Rita Camilla character. We've seen this actress before. She was in John Q. She was the girlfriend of John Q's best friend. At the baseball games, she has a ponytail all the time. She is dating the guy who at the end does the interview and is basically saying, I'm with John forever.
Oh my God, yeah. The best friend's...
Best friend's girl.
Ah.
Yep. But that's the only other time I've ever seen her to my knowledge.
Yeah, they made John Q after Mulholland Drive, so...
Yeah.
There you go. Mulholland Drive, definitely one of Lynch's best. Like,
good Lord,
easy.
yeah.
But we're gonna. This is it for Women in Crisis. We had a good old time. Although I'm happy to move forward. Yeah. I'm happy to move forward. Watched a lot of tortured ass women this month, but you're gonna give 1 through 5 and give 1 through 5 combined for best out of 10. I'll give it a 4.5, 4.75.
Yeah, I'm giving it a 5.
So some heavy hitters. There's going to be more heavy hitters next month. The heavy hitters ain't going to stop. But Mulholland Drive is an S-tier movie.
Yes. And I'm just going to make a prediction that if we ever get around to watching Blue Velvet for this show, that's also going to be an S-tier.
Yeah, no doubt. So check out the list. Mulholland Drive is in between Malcolm X and Out of the Past on our S-tier list. So that does it for Women in Crisis this month. What fun. What tragic fun. Over and over again. But we watched some unique and interesting movies, no doubt. We broke the seal on a few directors for the first time. But that's it. By the end of this week, we'll be deep in our other theme that I'm excited about, the Left Hand Endeavor classic film noir. So pop in over there, and we'll see you very soon. All right?
For the last time, watch your back, girl.